President Trump has declared war on the cartels. What's your mission?
Protect the homeland, protect the American people. It's as simple as that. I mean, how long have cartels waged war on our communities?
So America is no longer playing games at the southern border or in the waters around it. And it's not just that the physical border is guarded by Marines. There's also a massive offshore task force in the Caribbean combating these cartels where they live. But for some reason, smugglers and illegal immigrants think they can still rush across our border and enter America when nobody's watching. But now someone is, and their time is running out.
We cannot continue to just treat these guys as local street gangs. They have weaponry that looks like what terrorists, in some cases armies have. They control territory in many cases.
Wearing Kevlar bulletproof vests in 100 degrees, the U.S. Coast Guard is working to keep the South Texas border safe, riding up the Rio Grande on a mission to stop Mexican cartels and assist U.S. Border Patrol.
¿Qué piensas de Donald Trump?
Pues cumplió todo lo que dijo.
But it's not just Trump's deportations that are having an impact. The president's border policy is doing the work for him. Migrants are no longer making the journey.
Now, for the month of July, numbers are lower than they were last month, but we are still seeing around 1,000 people who have attempted to enter the country illegally through the El Paso sector, which does include New Mexico. And that is exactly why they're reinforcing it, because this is essentially a hotspot for the criminal cartels. And this is exactly the spot where we saw a man actually brandish a rifle at us.
So we might be looking at the beginning of the end for Mexico's cartels. And what nobody against the US securing its border will admit is that for the first time in decades, these criminals are in real trouble. Because they can't just hop across the border on foot like they used to, smuggling people into America. Or doing the same thing in a small boat, trying to enter off the coast of California, Florida, or Texas. Oh no, those days are over, and the cartel is now panicking as the US Navy and Marines are camped out at their spawn points. And here's how that's working out. All these troops at the border in national defense zones have caused crossings to plummet, and with U.S. military forces in the Caribbean for the first time off the coast of Venezuela, nobody wants to try anything at sea anymore either. Well, nobody with a brain in their head, as recently multiple boats of Tren de Aragua gang members have left countries in South America and never returned. Ditto boats of Mexican cartel folk approaching our coasts, which get stopped and every illegal immigrant and criminal on board arrested. Plus, some of these high-level offenders are even sent to places like El Salvador and Guantanamo. But border crossings are still happening, and this brings us to the real reason this border crackdown is now going up a notch. These criminal organizations, they have been hanging out in the wrong countries for so long that they now control the governments in many cases in those places. Which explains why they're so hard to stamp out. After all, how do you destroy a criminal organization that's in a sanctuary country like Mexico and has their own territory and essentially their own military? Or how do you get rid of a cartel in Venezuela where the cartel is in charge of the entire country with their strongman, its leader, running the place? Well, the answer to that starts one boat at a time.
I'm gonna put down my rifle.
So that boat full of illegal immigrants was stopped recently off the coast of San Diego, and everybody on board is now in custody. But the battle for the border goes on every single day, on land, in the waters, and as you're about to see, it spans from coast to coast.
That's why we stay vigilant.
This U.S. Coast Guard Maritime Safety and Security team from New Orleans shoved off in 2 patrol boats recently, riding up the Rio Grande on a mission to stop Mexican cartels and assist U.S. Border Patrol. Chief Petty Officer Andrew Werner leads this team. He also drives a boat loaded with weapons.
We have a couple long guns loaded up, and then we all carry personal defense weapons. So it's like you said, we're dealing with trans criminal organizations across the border. We understand that there's a lot of people that are coming over here to try to find a better life, but they're also dealing with those people to come across here, and they are right there.
They're right there, just across the water, you've got Mexican territory, which is a safe space for these criminal organizations where they try to plan border incursions every single hour of the day. And the idea that Mexico can't seem to figure out where these cartels are is just bogus. In fact, just a few months ago, News Nation was at the border and these cartel members came out of their base, which was totally not hidden at all, and tried to get the news crew to run away. On top of that, these guys even had their initials stamped on the side of the building. They're not trying to hide, that's for sure. Their activities are out in the open, everybody knows it, and that's why we've still got to be super vigilant at the border, even with crossings at the lowest point they've ever been.
Mexican cartel have drones in the air and spotters on the ground
Great.
all along the river.
They do use drones as a tactic to spot, and then they do have people on Mike's side, the Mexican side. They do have spotters to call us out and report our positions.
Their job is to look for suspicious activity, and he says that's getting harder.
Right, when the money's there, the technology's there as well. So it's hard to keep up with what they have and what we have to counter detect what they have, and it's we're always going to be chasing.
So look at that. You've got these criminal organizations in Mexico just across the water that are apparently at parity with the forces trying to stop them. That's why troops have been sent to the border. That's why there is a naval armada in the Caribbean. You see, things have to go up to a level that stops these guys, a level that they can't match. That's what's going to get rid of these illegal crossings. And that's why the U.S. has stationed F-35s in Puerto Rico. If these cartels try anything, no matter what country they're in, their activities are going to be spotted and dealt with almost immediately. In fact, that's already happened. We're seeing armadas of these cartel boats getting stopped in their tracks. However, the idea that cartels can just camp out in Mexico right on the other side of the border and are empowered to do this because of all the money they're making reveals another aspect to this story. Because even if Mexico won't do anything about these guys, if you do something about all the money they're making, well, they're gonna vanish.
When President Trump first won. Well, fast forward to right now, where Tom Homan says they're only seeing 11 gotaways in a single day across the entire southern border, and the cartels are feeling it. Take a listen to what he had to say today.
Why? Because we got a secure border. When you have a secure border, every border patrol agent's on the line doing their job. They're not changing diapers, making baby formula, making hospital runs, making airport runs. Everybody's on the line vigilant. And the cartels are hurting. Look, under Biden, the cartels made more money than they ever made. Smuggling aliens. Now we have a secure border, cartels are going bankrupt. And President Trump, through all his efforts and his leadership, we're going to wipe the cartels off the face of the earth.
Right. If they're not making any money, there's no reason for them to try and commit the same types of crime they've been committing because it's just not profitable anymore. Can you believe that 4 years ago, Border Patrol they were humanitarian care workers helping people cross the border, assisting them on their way into America? That's crazy. No wonder we had a migration crisis. But look, nobody wants these cartels around except for those who are on the take in some form or another, which reveals how they have their own territory in Mexico, which is essentially a no-go zone, even for the Mexican government. They're so well connected, they can pay to exist, pay to help allegedly friendly politicians get elected and run the show, and then pay to exploit two countries at the exact same time, which would be Mexico and the United States.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection encounters in July hit a historic low of those trying to cross the southwest border illegally. Just 4,600 arrests, down from 56,000 in July 2024. Warner says Mexican military have stepped up patrols, but they can't let their guard down because trans-criminal organizations, or TCOs, still operate here. And now there's a new problem. Mexicans are feeling safer and coming to the river to fish, swim, and have parties. He says that's making it harder to tell who's a bad guy and who's just having fun.
So look at this. Here you have a river. You got vehicles. You've got some people swimming over here. Law-abiding Mexicans, for the first time in decades, feel safe enough to go in their own river. Isn't that crazy? And although this presents a new potential problem for law enforcement, it shows that the border crackdown is working. This benefits people in Mexico. This benefits people in America, not the criminals, not the people who are allegedly in league with the criminals, like the corrupt politicians, but it benefits the law-abiding in ways Americans were told forever just didn't exist. We were told, oh, law-abiding Mexicans, oh yeah, they don't have a cartel problem over there. There's no problem with gangs over there. People are fine. Really? They couldn't even go in their own river. This is the first time they've taken a dip. Can't make this stuff up.
Well, we can all appreciate that, testifying against El Chapo, going against the Sinaloa cartel. The Sinaloa cartel is one of the cartels, the primary cartel, in fact, that the Trump administration says they're going after and going on offense. What do you think about this as an approach, going on offense?
Well, it's great, especially today as kickoff, right? I returned that analogy, but taking it to where, you know, the cartel's territories, as we saw with the bombing of a boat, with traffickers, I think it sends a clear message. The Trump administration is taking this very seriously, and they're not playing any games.
But how high and how far do we...
So this guy who's wearing a mask, he's a former cartel member who ended up testifying. He says on the news he still protects himself to just keep his identity as secret as possible. That way, nobody comes after him. He still feels like he's in fear for his life because of how dangerous and how these cartels are just pretty much everywhere, even though he's in America, of all places. And in his opinion, this massive crackdown on cartels is having an effect on them. They don't want to come out and just operate in the open like they used to. This forces them underground, forces them off the waterways, forces them off the border itself. And that's because U.S. military intervention and technological superiority are something these guys just can't match. Yes, they've got their own territory. Yes, they're heavily armed, but come on, this is the U.S. military we're talking about here. But still, the money, the networks that these criminals use to make that money, that's what fuels their organizations. If those stay open, doesn't matter how many troops you've got down at the border. But as you're about to see, something started disrupting these operations almost the second Trump got into office.
Me deportaron en avión hasta de Texas a Villahermosa, una parte de México.
¿Qué piensas de Donald Trump?
Pues cumplió todo lo que dijo.
But it's not just Trump's deportations that are having an impact. The president's border policy is doing the work for him. Migrants are no longer making the journey. In March last year, U.S. immigration authorities stopped nearly 190,000 people attempting to enter from Mexico. In the same period this year, it was 11,000.
Wow. Okay, so this woman, she explains to us why that's happening. This woman right here. So look, she says she was deported on a plane to another part of Mexico. And that is totally different how things used to operate at the southern border. The way it used to work at the southern border is someone would attempt to cross and they would get stopped. They would get turned around immediately at the border, which means they would go right back across the water or right back to where the smugglers are hiding out, and they would try again. And the cartels had a whole business based around this. They would charge people money so that they would get 3 different crossing attempts before they had to pay again. But if somebody comes across the border, they get apprehended and they get sent on a plane very far away. That totally takes the money out of this operation because nobody's gonna put all that they have in one crossing attempt when the border is totally locked down, and they're gonna go completely bankrupt when they get caught, which is almost a certainty, and that is totally destroying how these cartels operate. So look at this. This is the place where she says she was deported back to. It's a big city in Mexico, but look at how far away it is from the U.S. southern border, which is up here. You're sending somebody on a plane thousands of miles away, and if they want to work their way back, well, they got to pay a whole bunch of different criminals again. The money for that just doesn't exist. People aren't going to make the journey if it's fruitless. But if they can get 3 attempts at the border and they may be able to sneak in, get instant asylum once they come here, the opportunity is a lot different, isn't it? None of that stuff happens anymore. And what this reveals is that the most important tool in the battle over border security is to remove the incentive for folks to break the law. If there's no reason to break the law because it's a bad idea and it comes with real consequences, some of which are financial, the millions who were paying these cartels to illegally enter our country are going to vanish. Which perfectly explains why the U.S. had a border crisis to begin with. There was no enforcement down here. We heard from the